أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of God, most merciful, ever merciful, and may God's peace and blessings be upon His holy Prophet Muhammad and the purified members of his household and progeny.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu ala al Hussain wa ala Ali ibn al Hussain wa ala awlad al Hussain wa ala ashab al Hussain. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We continue, inshaAllah, for tonight where we left off. We covered the life of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam from the beginning until about year 50 after the migration of the Prophet, which is the year where his brother Imam al Hussain alayhi salam was martyred, and the year which he took over as Imam. And tonight we wanted to cover the last 10 years of his holy and blessed life, the last 10 years leading all the way to the tragedy of Karbala. Why do we study the life of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam, and why specifically those 10 years? We already said that Imam al Hussain is a pivotal figure, a historic figure not only in Islam but in all of humanity. But in addition to that, we as followers of Ahl al-Bayt, we should pay special attention to the lives of Ahl al-Bayt. When you follow someone, when you want to take someone as a role model, when you love someone, you want to know everything you can about them. We often and unfortunately find ourselves in the situation where we may know a lot more about other people, about actors, about athletes, than we know about the figures of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. So one reason, beyond the historical aspect of our study, is that we want to use them as role models. We want to be able to truly say that we are followers and lovers of Ahl al-Bayt, and this requires a knowledge of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam, and a knowledge of how their lives actually unfolded. From another point of view, we need to understand what were the developments and what were the events that actually led to the tragedy of Karbala. And obviously we're going to find a lot of those details in those final 10 years of the life of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam. And finally, and this is more from a theological perspective, from a aqa'id and beliefs perspective, there is actually a very big objection about a certain aspect of imamah that I wanted to address tonight. Although this would require an extensive study, I'm trying to maximize the blessing of having your attendance and the time I have to lump it all together. The objection has started since the time of Karbala, and it goes as follows. When historians look at the life of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam, they say it seems strange that two people raised in the same manner by the same parents who are brothers and both of them imams, we find one of them leaning towards a peace treaty with Bani Umayyah, with Muawiyah, while the other one is leaning towards the sword and carrying the sword all the way to the tragedy of Karbala. This gives us the impression that there is a discrepancy, that there's a variance between the behavior of one of them and the behavior of the other. And this then opens the door to much broader, wider objections against the entire theory of the imamah. The principle that we believe in as followers of Ahl al-Bayt, that the imams are actually divinely appointed, that the imams are actually divinely guided. Because this gives the impression that the imams are behaving and acting based on their personal characters and their attitudes and personal approach, as opposed to being divinely guided. And that's why they add to this that Imam al Hussain alayhi salam was someone who leaned more towards luxury and towards women and towards money and towards living in a palace and trying to avoid the battlefield and confrontation with Bani Umayyah. Whereas Imam al Hussain alayhi salam would have been someone who is much closer to his father in character and who did not mind the battlefield and the sword. So what we want to do while looking at the last 10 years of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam is to at the same time run in parallel the lives of Imam al Hassan and Imam al Hussain, especially during those last 10 years, to see if we can find the answers to this objection during that part of Imam Hussein's life. So we want to look at the life of Imam al Hussain during those 10 years of his life, looking at it from three specific angles, looking at his activities from three angles, three categories. The first one having to do with religion from the point of view of general guidance of the people. The second one having to do with religion, but this time from ensuring that there's no deviation from religion within the Islamic nation. And the third category of activities of the Imam is the one that we can generally call the political activities of the Imam. So coming to the first category of activities from the Imam, we talk about the general guidance. What is the general role of prophets and messengers? The Holy Quran says that their main primary role is to communicate the message of God to humanity in the most accurate and in the most complete manner possible. And in fact, many of God's prophets have sacrificed their lives for this specific and noble cause. And this is what we see primarily from the life of the Holy Prophet, and to very large extents from the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam as well as Imam al Hussain. And the same thing we see in the life of Imam al Hussain, especially when he took over as Imam in those last 10 years. In one of these instances, we have a man by the name of Nafi' ibn al-Azraq, who came to debate the Imam, and this is mentioned in the books of history. Who is Nafi' ibn al-Azraq? He was one of the leaders of the Khawarij in the time of the Imam. Now we have to go back and dig a little bit. Who are the Khawarij? The Khawarij is a group of people who existed in thought, at least, since the time of the Holy Prophet. He had already identified them. He had identified their corrupt, deviant way of understanding and interpreting religion in a very literal sense. And that group only appeared as a well-formed entity during the time of Imam Ali alayhi salam, specifically during the battle of Siffin between Muawiyah and Imam Ali alayhi salam, when they started saying that this is an unjust war between two unjust parties. Both Muawiyah and Imam Ali are going to go to hell. Rule only belongs to God. Anyone who rules is going to end up having to fight. Therefore, everybody who wants to rule is going to go to hell. That's when they started. And of course, they left Imam Ali during that battle, and this led to the Battle of Nahrawan, where Imam Ali could not let them go for the crimes that they were committing socially. And today when we hear that there are deviant interpretations of Islam, often case, what we find is that it's a copy-paste of the thought of the Khawarij, exemplified today by people that are referred to as extremists and fundamentalists, when in reality that same thought has come down from them all the way to people we find today. And what's interesting is that Muslim scholars and Muslim schools have been unanimous. They have a consensus that the Khawarij are not considered Muslims in their thought. They consider them as having stepped outside of the boundaries of Islam because of what they believe in. In any case, following the life of Imam Ali alayhi salam, when Muawiyah worked together with the Khawarij to get rid of Imam Ali and he was martyred, the Khawarij remained as a group, and eventually there's a man by the name of Abdullah ibn Zubair, who they joined forces with him to fight against Bani Umayyah. And when he was victorious and started to gain more control, they came to him and they asked him bluntly, what's your opinion of Uthman and what's your opinion of Ali? And his answer very shortly was, I have nothing bad to say about either one of them. He was a politician and he was a strategic man. He didn't want to cause more strife for himself. He said he has nothing bad to say about either one of them. So this caused a problem between them internally, and they split in two parts. One part was called al-Najdat, and another one was called al-Azariqah. And Nafi' ibn al-Azraq was the leader of the Azariqah. So this man came Their point was to show that the classic view of interpretation of Islam was all wrong. So they often wanted to debate with the scholars of Islam. So he came to Medina looking for Abdullah ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas at that time was considered one of the top scholars, if not the top scholar in Islam. He would sit in the mosque of the Holy Prophet and teach the commentary of the Quran and the narrations of the Holy Prophet. So he came to him and he told him, "You, Ibn Abbas, you who give the rulings about ants and ticks and naml wal qaml, why don't you describe to me the God that you worship?" Ibn Abbas knew that this was going to be a very dangerous answer if he was one to give one. This is a very dangerous man with a very large group behind him, and it may lead to a war, it may lead to killing. So Ibn Abbas told him, "Go to Al Hussain ibn Ali to get your answer." He told him, "I came to debate you." He told him, "You will find that Al Hussain ibn Ali is from the household of prophethood and the source of revelation, and you will find your answer there." So he came to the Imam and he asked his question, and the Imam answered him. And he started by telling him, these matters of religion cannot and should not be understood by simple analogies. And God is not to be understood as something that we can perceive with our five senses. And then the Imam went on into a sermon, the likes of which we find in Nahj al-Balagha in structure and eloquence and content, about Tawheed and about how to understand God and religion. And it is said that Nafi' ibn al-Azraq started crying and he said, "How beautiful is your speech, O Hussein." And it is said that the Imam replied to him, telling him, "It has reached me, or it has reached us, that you consider my father a kafir, and that you consider my brother a kafir, and that you consider me a kafir." And so the man replied, "I bear witness that you are truly the light of Islam and the star of truth." And the reason we mention this event, because this is one among many, is that these instances show us the role that the Imams were playing. This could have gone in a very different way. The Khawarij used to kill people with whom they disagree. And you see that this man is now changing his mind because he heard a few words from Imam al Hussain alayhi salam. Now, if we continue to the second category of the activities of the Imam, we talk about their role when they prevent deviation in religion. And as we have already mentioned, perhaps the biggest deviation that was taking place during the time of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam was the very calculated, very deliberate, intentional strategy, especially of Bani Umayyah, to completely erase and eradicate the name of Imam Ali alayhi salam from Islam. To leave absolutely no merit and no mention of Imam Ali in Islam. And if there is any mention, then it had to be to ruin his reputation, to ensure that no one would ever take anything from him, any thought from him. We have all heard how Bani Umayyah, and especially Muawiyah, he started a policy for anyone to work in the entire Islamic empire at that time. You have to meet certain conditions, and one of them being that if you are to speak publicly at any event, that you start and end your public intervention with a curse upon Imam Ali at the beginning and the end. And this lasted 70 years. This lasted for generations. There are generations of Muslims who were raised in this Islamic nation where Imam Ali's name was only followed by a curse every time it was mentioned. And so we see that during the time of Imam al Hussain, peace upon him, he did everything he could to counter this. And when we come to Imam al Hussain's 10 years of rule, we see that he did the same thing as we have already alluded to. And in this instance that I wanted to mention tonight, we see that Imam al Hussain alayhi salam, to use another example, we see that the Imam organized something that today we would refer to as an international conference. And he did it at a very strategic time, as used to do Imam al Hussain alayhi salam. He would use the day called the day of Mina, the 11th day in the season of pilgrimage, because it doesn't have many rituals taking place in it, he used that day to call for a conference. Because that day, there's plenty of time for the pilgrims to use it for whatever they wish. So that the Imam strategically used that time. And who did he invite? It is said that he invited all of Banu Hashim. He invited all of the companions that were still alive from the Holy Prophet, as well as their sons. And he also invited everybody in society who was respected for their worship or their knowledge. In other words, he invited everybody that today we would call the who's who of Islam at that time. And this kind of conference took place every year in the Hajj. But this one is specifically mentioned by historians, and it's very well documented. It happened in year 56 of Hijrah. So I mention it as well. So it is said that the Imam gathered all these people in front of him, and when they all attended, he finally took the pulpit and he gave the following sermon. He started by saying, and don't forget, Muawiyah is still a ruler. Muawiyah died in year 60. So this is 4 years before the death of Muawiyah. The Imam takes the pulpit and says, this tyrant has committed the crimes and the sins that you all know against us and against our Shia. I ask, or I want to ask, all of you about one matter. Let me know if I speak the truth or whether I am lying. Then write down everything you hear from me and go back to your people and find those you trust among them and tell them about what you hear so that they may support us. And now we see the strategic mind of the Imam at work. When he gathers the people, how he asks them to write down everything, how he tells them to go back to their people once the pilgrimage season is done and to teach those they trust among their people. You see how Ahl al-Bayt were spreading knowledge, the tactics they use. And then what did the Imam say? The historians say that the Imam started enumerating all the merits of Imam Ali alayhi salam as they were mentioned in the prophetic narrations, one by one. And as he mentions one, everybody in attendance would say, you are saying the truth, O Hussain. You are saying the truth, O Hussain. And they would write it down. This and other events, first of all, show us that the path and the policies that were followed by the Imam were no different than the ones followed by Imam al Hussain, first of all. And secondly, it reminds us of the role, this religious role of the Imams in preventing deviation when they see it in society. Now we come to the third category of activities of the Imam. The activities that we have referred to as being of the political or more political nature. And so we ask, what was the first step politically? What was the first step that Imam al Hussain alayhi salam took when he became the Imam after the martyrdom, after poison was sent to his brother through his wife from Muawiyah? What was the first step? The first and most fundamental, important political step of the Imam was to ensure to maintain all the conditions of the peace treaty between his brother Imam al Hussain alayhi salam and Muawiyah. Why did Imam al Hussain create, draft and sign that treaty in the first place? People were tired of fighting when Imam Ali alayhi salam was there. They did not want to fight anymore, whether it was for the truth or otherwise. So they started betraying the Imam. And when the fight between Imam al Hussain continued with Muawiyah, he was betrayed by his own people. There were assassination attempts against him from his own army. And the Imam saw that he does not have many supporters left. And if he were to engage in a battle and continue in battle with Muawiyah, Islam would simply be completely eradicated. So the Imam used a very intelligent, very strategic tactic. He tried to accomplish all of the objectives that he was aiming for, that he would gain by being a ruler, without being a ruler through the peace treaty. And if we read the conditions, and we don't have time to go through the details of the peace treaty, if we read the conditions of the peace treaty between the Imam and Muawiyah, we see that he would have been basically a ruler without ruling. The first condition in that peace treaty, there are almost 40 of them. We're not going to mention all of them, just a few to give an idea. The first one is that he wanted to establish what today we would call social justice. Bani Umayyah were starting to use the Islamic Empire as their personal treasury. And people did not have food, and did not have shelters, and did not have safety or security. So the Imam used that as a first condition in the peace treaty. I agree to enter into peace treaty with Muawiyah on these conditions. The first, social justice for everybody. The second, freedom of belief. The followers of Imam Ali and the followers of Ahlul Bayt were being punished and tortured and killed simply for their belief. So the Imam used the second condition to say, no one shall be punished, and no one shall be tortured, and no one shall be killed for their belief. This is a very modern notion today. And the Imam continued. He said, for the third condition, he wanted to guarantee and establish financial and economic security for everyone, one, and secondly, especially for the followers of Ahlul Bayt who had been removed from the lists of allowance of the country. And in addition to that, the Imam would have been guaranteed himself such a large income that he would have basically been able to rule in an autonomous manner. He would have had his own country as a result of the revenue that he would have received had Bani Umayyah respected those conditions. And lastly, the condition that the day that Muawiyah dies, the Khilafah goes to Imam al Hussain alayhi salam. And if Imam al Hussain is not alive, then it goes to Imam al Hussain alayhi salam. Those were some of the conditions that Imam al Hussain put in his peace treaty. So when he passed away, the first step politically of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam was to ensure that that political treaty was going to remain in action, was going to remain and be respected. And so the delegations upon delegations came to the Imam from Basra, from Kufa and elsewhere. And the letters came to the Imam telling him, now that Imam al Hussain has passed, as one of the companions of the Imam, this was one of the companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam, Al-Ju'dah ibn Hubayra ibn Abi Wahab. He wrote to the Imam, and it's important because this answer came back again and again from Imam al Hussain alayhi salam, which explains to us his strategy. He wrote to the Imam telling him, we're no longer in the shackles of the peace treaty between Imam al Hussain and Muawiyah. So lead us into a revolution against them. And the Imam replied, and this is important, the Imam replied, so long as Muawiyah is on the throne, remain in your houses and wait for my instructions. Which means that the Imam was against the idea of breaking the conditions and the tenets of the peace treaty. While the Imam was agreeing to keep the peace treaty intact, does this mean that the Imam was more in agreement with Muawiyah or Bani Umayyah in general than Imam al Hussain or Imam Ali alayhi salam? Absolutely not. The tension and the confrontations continued, but they were not military in nature. And we are told right away, from the beginning of the Imam of Imam al Hussain, he received a letter from Muawiyah in which Muawiyah is threatening him and telling him, I hope you do not dare to conspire against me. And if you do, I will catch you. And the Imam responded with a historic letter. And that letter deserves to be studied because it gives us all the sins and crimes of Bani Umayyah that led to Karbala and led to the uprising of the Imam. The Imam starts by listing the crimes and the sins of Muawiyah. He tells him, are you not the one who killed the great companion of the Prophet, Hajr ibn Adi, and his companions after promising them safety? Are you not the one who killed the great worshipper Amr ibn al-Khuzai? Amr ibn al-Khuzai, are you not the one who killed him after his body had started to melt from the worship? And you had given him promises of safety that had you given a bird on top of a mountain, he would have come down to you. And then you duped him and you backstabbed him and killed him. And the Imam continues listing the crimes and the sins of Muawiyah. And at the end of the letter, he tells Muawiyah, and you have claimed that I am seeking to cause a fitna. And I swear that I do not know of any fitna that is greater on the nation of Islam than your rule over Islam and over the nation of God's Messenger. So the confrontation between them continued. Only it was not military in nature. In that time, Muawiyah started taking a new approach. He started preparing for someone to take over the throne for him. And when the news started spreading that it was going to be his son Yazid, it is said that Imam al Hussain said, if someone like Yazid is to rule over Islam, then let us say farewell to Islam. So what did Muawiyah do? He took multiple approaches. The first one is that he tried to embellish the personality of Yazid to the masses. No one thought that Yazid was a fit man for any kind of rule. So one of the things that Muawiyah did is that he gave a group of people, a group of soldiers to Yazid and sent them in battle so that he can later say Yazid is a military commander. And it is said that when they reached that destination, it was in the middle of a desert and it was extremely hot and there were a lot of mosquitoes. And the mosquitoes apparently were causing malaria, people were dying. Yazid didn't like this. He took his wife and he took wine and he went on top of a mountain because the air is cooler, and he left his men dying on the battlefield. So the attempts of Muawiyah to embellish his image were not working. The second thing that Muawiyah started doing very early on is to eliminate anyone who may have been a competition to Yazid succeeding to the throne. And historians say this is the main reason why he got rid of and assassinated Imam al Hussain alayhi salam. For Imam al Hussain is clearly the one who should have been the legitimate Khalifa. So he started with him. But if we read the books of history for those years, we find one after another of the deaths. Some of them clear. He even killed people from Bani Umayyah because they would have been clear competition, or they were very fit to become rulers in the political sense. We have the governor of Homs at that time. Muawiyah told him, what do you think? I'd like to make my son Yazid into a ruler. He told him, I don't think it's a good idea. He had him assassinated right away from Bani Umayyah. And when we follow the events of those years, we see the people that were killed one after the other, all of them assassinated by Muawiyah because he's eliminating any competition, anyone who might question why someone like Yazid would become ruler. Anyone who might be fit for rule. Some of these people, for instance, Abdurrahman ibn Abi Bakr, year 53. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas. Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas was one of the great commanders of a military commander under the Holy Prophet. He was a man who was very well known. And perhaps the funny part in history, the history when you go back to the books, it's written by year. They say events of year 50, events of year 51, events of year 52. And you see the lists of the companions of the Holy Prophet and the famous personalities, all of them dying. Not all of them with a clear indication why they died, randomly. But we all know why they died, who was eliminating them. It is well known that Muawiyah used to say, God has soldiers made of honey. And he would send poisoned honey to all of his enemies, one way or another, to get rid of them. And then, after all this, Muawiyah asked his governors to start preparing the ground and to start spreading the news that Yazid is to become the heir to the throne. So he sent a letter to Marwan ibn al-Hakam. Marwan, who was the governor over Medina. Marwan told him, I don't think that Yazid should be the ruler after you. And it is well known that Marwan thought he wanted to become the Khalifa. So Muawiyah right away asked him to step down as governor of Medina, and he appointed al-Walid ibn Utbah. And then he sent to Ziyad ibn Abih, and he asked him, same thing. He didn't make the same mistake as Marwan, but he wrote a letter to Yazid telling him, apparently your father is insisting that you are going to become his successor. So you have to tone it down with your corruption and your perversions and your drinking during daylight, and at least try to hide it at night so that we can get away with it. And this is compatible with what Muawiyah himself tells his son in some of his verses of poetry. He tells him, you can pretend to be a worshipper and a righteous person during the day, and once the darkness of the night comes, you get to do whatever you want. And all of this continued. And then in the year 53, and again in year 56, Muawiyah visited the Medina, and he met with 4 people. These 4 people were considered to be the most important figures at that time. They were none other than Ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Zubair, Abdullah ibn Umar, and Imam al Hussain alayhi salam. And he told them, as you know, I'm about to die. I need to prepare the terrain for someone to succeed me, and I see none other better suited for this position than my son Yazid. And it is said that Ibn Abbas was about to talk. Imam al Hussain alayhi salam told him, let me speak. And he told him, Muawiyah, you are speaking of Yazid in a manner as though we do not know him. We all know very well that Yazid is the one who plays with felines and the one who plays with monkeys. And Yazid is the one who chases young girls. And Yazid is the one who is addicted to wine. So why do not you leave Yazid to the things that he has taken for himself and not talk about rule? And this very clearly made it very clear right away to Muawiyah that Imam Hussain alayhi salam was going to be a very major obstacle to clearly establish Yazid as a person to become the successor to Muawiyah. And the Imam, in one way, shape or form, continued his opposition. Muawiyah told these 4 people, I'm going to give a sermon in front of the people on Friday. You 4 will be in attendance. If either any of you 4 dares to open their mouth to speak a word, your head will be cut off. Even if it is to support me, your head will be cut off. And he appointed 2 soldiers to stand at the head of each one of the 4, and Muawiyah gave his sermon saying that Yazid was going to take over. Year 60, Muawiyah dies. The letters come from Damascus to Medina. They take 12 days to get there. So people don't yet know that Muawiyah has died and that Yazid, they're trying to establish Yazid as the ruler. So the governor, when Walid ibn Utbah gets the letter from Damascus, he calls, as the letter says, he calls Abdullah ibn Zubair and Imam al Hussain alayhi salam to the palace in Medina. And Al-Tabari says that the letter announcing officially that Muawiyah has died and it is time to take allegiance to Yazid, he says, Al-Tabari, there was an attachment to the letter, a secret addendum, the size of the ear of a mouse, that says, and if the 4 men refuse, kill them. So he called Abdullah ibn Zubair and Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and the Imam took with him 30 from Banu Hashim, led by Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, and they came to the palace of the governor of Medina, where upon entering, Abdullah ibn Zubair asked the Imam, what do you think this is about? And the Imam told him, it probably has to do with Muawiyah dying. And the Imam didn't say more. So Al-Walid ibn Utbah tells them, Muawiyah has died, it is time to pay your allegiance to Yazid. This is in the middle of the night. So the Imam tells him in a very strategic, smart way. The Imam diffuses the situation by saying, Governor, someone of my stature should not be asked to give his allegiance in secret, behind closed doors, in the middle of the night. Someone like me should be asked to give his allegiance publicly in front of everyone in the middle of the day. So why don't we wait until the morning and then we can discuss who is most fit for Khilafah? And it is said that Al-Walid was not the most confrontational man. So he agreed initially. But who was in attendance with him? Marwan ibn al-Hakam, the previous governor whom Muawiyah had removed. And he told him, listen, governor. He told him, listen, governor. This fox, if he were to escape from your hands, all you will ever see from him is nothing but dust. Put a rope around their heads and their hands and force them to give you allegiance. And if they refuse, cut their heads off. And if you do not do it right now or don't want to do it, tell me and I will do it for you. This is when Imam al Hussain alayhi salam, who had left Banu Hashim standing at the door of the palace, he had instructed them, if you hear my voice rise, that's when you come in. And the Imam raised his voice and he talked to Marwan and he told him, you, son of the prostitute, his mother was a known prostitute, son of the prostitute, you are the one who wants to kill me. Neither you nor him is going to be the one who kills me. We are the household of the Prophet. We are the source of revelation. It is with us that God has begun, and it is with us that God will end. And as for Yazid, he is a corrupt and perverted man. He is a man who is addicted to wine. He is a man who kills innocent souls. Someone like me does not pay allegiance to someone like him. Banu Hashim, when they heard the voice of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam rise, they entered and they all left together. The second day from there, the Imam had already decided that he was going to leave the Medina of his grandfather forever. He prepared his caravan, he came to the grave of the Holy Prophet, and he lamented his case to the Prophet, saying, my dear Prophet, Messenger of God, this is your son and the son of your daughter, Al Hussain ibn Fatima, the one you have left to rule over your nation. They have all betrayed me, as you have witnessed. And it said that Imam al Hussain alayhi salam, sleep befell him at that time. And he saw the Holy Prophet in his dream. And the Holy Prophet told him, my son, hurry to us. Your father and your mother are getting impatient. And the Imam told his grandfather, I do not need to stay in this world. Take me away with you. And this is when the Holy Prophet told him, my son, there is a rank reserved for you in the eyes of God that you can only attain through your martyrdom. And so the Imam, upon waking up, gave the instructions that it was time to depart from Medina to the city of Kufa. And we know how that chapter ended, especially in a night like this, dedicated to Muslim ibn Aqil, when they betrayed the Imam after sending him the thousands upon thousands of letters. When we look at these events, this third type of event, activities of the Imam, the political activities, we see to what extent the activities of the Imam were in perfect alignment with the ones of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam. So if we look at it from a historical point of view, there is no question that Imam al Hussain and Imam al Hussain alayhi salam were fully aligned, were it not for the different circumstances. Had Imam al Hussain been the one to face the conditions that Imam al Hussain was facing, Imam al Hussain would have been the one to be martyred and killed in the same manner in Karbala. He would have made the same decisions. And had Imam al Hussain confronted the same circumstances of Imam al Hussain, he would have been the one to draft the peace treaty. And this is from a historical sense only. If we look at it from a religious sense, then during the lifetime of Imam al Hussain and Imam al Hussain, Imam al Hussain was a follower and Imam al Hussain was the Imam. And we see the respect and the devotion and the loyalty of Imam al Hussain alayhi salam until the last day. On the 10th of Muharram, when the son of Imam al Hassan came to Imam al Hussain to ask permission to go into battle to defend the honor of Imam al Hussain and the woman and the children who were left. When he heard his uncle saying, "Is there no one to support us?" when all the companions and all the family members of the Imam had been killed. So there was this 11-year-old child, the son of Imam al Hassan alayhi salam, who came and who asked permission to go into battle from Imam al Hussain. And the Imam refused, telling him, "My son, you are all that I have left from Imam al Hassan. How can I let you go to your death?" So the boy cried in disappointment and left, and then came back moments later carrying something, carrying a piece of paper. He gave it to Imam al Hussain and he was happy. Imam al Hussain looked at the piece of paper and it was the will written by Imam al Hassan alayhi salam to his son al Qasim, telling him, "My son Qasim, if you are ever alive in a day when you see your uncle all alone and needing a supporter, do not disappoint me and make me proud." So the Imam, our Imam Hussain alayhi salam, the Maqtal says, he took the piece of paper and rubbed it on his eyes because it was written by the hand, and these were the words and the lines of Imam al Hassan alayhi salam. This was a blessing to Imam al Hussain. And he cried and he turned towards Medina. And he said, "Dear brother Aba Muhammad, peace upon you. You took care of us in your life and you continue to take care of us from beyond the grave." We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us understand the lives of Ahlul Bayt and to see them as one light, as they truly are, and help us follow them in action and in belief. Assalamu ala al-Hussain wa ala Ali ibn al-Hussain wa ala awlad al-Hussain wa ala ashab al-Hussain wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.